Welcome to the Toxic Mold Sex Podcast, the show where we dig deep into the hidden dangers of toxic mold and bring you real life stories from those in recovery. I'm Miriam Khalili, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, Emily Rachel.
Thank you, Miriam. Today we have the honor of interviewing Dana Richardson. She is a mold lawyer and she's here to share her story. The first question for her before she gets into sharing her story is to explain to everybody what she was like. You know, what was your life like before you ever went into a toxic environment that changed your life?
Prior to getting sick, I was always really healthy. Growing up as a child, I did have some asthma and weird headaches, when I was maybe 8 or 9, but it passed. And I was always very active, creative. I was like, as a kid, I was just into dancing and reading and I was just like totally active in swimming all the time. And travel. I love traveling. In my early 20s, moved to California, started surfing. And then my dream was to work with dolphins. And so I ended up living in Hawaii and I started taking people swimming with wild dolphins. I started an underwater photography business, which is this photo I have behind me because it reminds me of I'll get into that later, but I did used to have a life where I was vibrant and I still get a little emotional, but I was a free diver. I traveled to Tahiti. I would go people would visit me in Hawaii and I would take them, we'd drive around the island and hike. I'll do all these activities in one day and I work in the ocean and then I'd go swimming and then I'd go surfing and I started another company designing mermaid tails and I put on retreats. My passion was really inspiring women and kids to live their dreams and just to wake up to who they are and using the vessel of the ocean and so I did retreats for women entrepreneurs and that was pretty much the highlight of my life. It was amazing. And then things changed very, very fast. It was a couple years of slow bits to completely my life. I just completely 2 years bedridden, which we can get into, but yeah, I went from being, and I was always really passionate about helping people, especially women, right? To wake up to the fact that stress creates illness, it's important to do yoga, meditation, eat organic, be happy, live the life that you want to live. And so I had no idea of the possibility that I could be taken down to such a level to not even be able to cognitively put words together. It's crazy. So I was very vibrant and active and just had a really amazing life.
So it must have been pretty unexpected. It sounds like you were doing all the things that we all want to do to try to curate a very healthy, vibrant life. And so what was going through your mind when all of this happened and how, go ahead and tell us what happened, how you discovered the mold and how you got sick and that part of your journey.
Yeah, well, it was, because, and I was also at that time, I did, I did a speaking event with Hay House for, just the mermaid retreats I was doing and the benefits of the ocean and being stress-free and healthy, happy, all that stuff. Yeah. Um, and then it took a while for me to even find out about mold, but it was towards the end, because I left Hawaii when it was a bit the spring of 2014. And the last couple years that I lived there, I started spending less time in the ocean and more time in the house that I had been living in. And that house, I mean, in Hawaii, now I know pretty much every home in Hawaii has mold, and water damage of some sort. And I mean, the roof of the home was covered in black. And I never thought anything about it. I mean, there was a roof leak when it rained heavily. But I never saw mold and I never worried about it. I mean, it was like my entire life, I think maybe I heard, oh, I might have an allergy to mold, but an allergy isn't anything to be afraid of. And so it was like around that time when I started getting extremely tired. And I also there's fog on the Big Island of Hawaii, which is from the volcano. So I thought, well, maybe it's from the fog. And then I do have tattoos, and I like my last tattoo I had a reaction to. It wasn't an infection, but once that healed, it was like my body was trying to get the ink out, and I had it retouched up, and the tattoo artist, my friend, like we didn't really say anything, but it my flesh smelled like a rotting dead fish. Like it was bad. And we just thought there was something wrong with it. Didn't smell like healthy flesh. And I didn't know, again, I was just really tired. So from that reaction, I was giving an antibiotic that made me anaphylactic. So I had a reaction to the antibiotic. There were a lot of things happening in my body. But I remember just thinking, like, in that house, I would be just so tired and not want to do anything, and thinking there's something in these walls that's making me ill, but I don't know what it is. And then I did some cleanses, like the master cleanse, and I was still able to go out into the ocean. My nose was running constantly. I was having lung issues. But I pushed through it. And I remember doing this photo shoot for like I had a friend that was an underwater photographer and did a shoot, and I was so ill. It's a beautiful photo, but all I see is how ill I was. I was pale, could barely get through, but I was still able at that time to push through. And then I just decided that I was gonna pack up everything. I had an intuition to leave the island, and I was going to grow my business in a new direction and come back to visit family in Arizona, and then start, speaking events, write a book. I had like all these plans. And so I came back here. It was, the spring of 2014. And I did a couple events. Like it was that year I was still able to put on things. There was some stuff that did happen. Like my father had brain tumors that began around that time. So there was that stress as well. But I had always been able to handle stressors in my life. And so it was also around I think it was that year I would have to pull over on the road I had such painful periods. And I remember a friend telling me, like, that's not normal, like, go get it checked. And that was the start of finding out I had fibroids and I had to have those removed. Which I, again, just thought, well, that's probably just something some women, get, excuse me, from painful, heavy periods. So there was that. And then a year later, I started having an earache that was like, I couldn't walk without feeling nauseous or seasick. And that grew. And then I get really bad sinus infections. And then that grew into being told to go to an ENT. And then I had TMJ. I had like severe myofascial, like face nerve pain. And I didn't want to take any mind altering drugs because that would create more symptoms. So I just lived with the pain, and then it extended. I couldn't, the neuropathy of my hands and feet, my back, like nerve pain started getting really bad. And again, I was still able to push through it somehow, even though it was like beginning to be debilitating. But I was still able to work. And then I would drive. At that time, I was living in California, and I'd drive back and forth to visit my dad and other family. And then I was staying at like different places in California that I'm sure had hidden mold, water damage. You know, there were musty smells, staying with friends. And I don't know. Again, I'd never lived anywhere where you could see or smell mold. But I was getting progressively more tired and having more of these chronic pain that was neurological, right? Like the neuropathy. And then it was I think it was 2016 or 17 that I moved back here. And at that point, that was the last job that I was able to work. And I remember I got orthopedic shoes. I had like all different, I was trying everything I could do. But I was starting to get severe migraines, and I couldn't stand like the back nerve pain, and that like the headache. It would cover my entire head and face. And then the TMJ, I had I went to multiple specialists. I was told that I needed braces. I needed to realign. I had to have my jaw realigned. And that the issue was, I don't know, like my ear, my jaw, all these things. And it was from birth. And I said, I've never had this problem before, you know. So that was the beginning of gaslighting from medical doctors. And then by the time I had gone through all of this, like splint therapy, and I was still in pain, I was not wanting to do the braces or all these surgeries because it was not, I knew that wasn't the issue. I knew that there was something else going on. And so I ended up back here in Arizona, and I had to leave the job. And I remember I was crying because I've never had to leave a job. I've never not been able to work. I've never not been able to like make something work. And I couldn't. And I tried less hours, less like everything. And at that point, I mean, I literally couldn't stand or sit longer than 15 minutes without having, it felt like there was like some sort of torture puppeteer that was like, do you know those like rolling hoses that like you roll up a hose? It felt like someone was behind
Yeah.
me, and they were rolling up my, like pulling my rib cage back and tighter and tighter and tighter. And then just the full migraine would cover my face. I couldn't stand heat. I couldn't stand certain smells. I couldn't, my left ribs started to be pulled back. And I like, again, I've been gaining 10 pounds a year consistently. So, I mean, I was close to like, I don't even, I mean, my highest was probably close to 200 pounds, which I had never like, and I couldn't figure out. I was still trying to exercise. I was still trying to like eat, you know, organic and like healthy foods, or like, you know, all these different types of, and nothing made any sense. And no one around me was really saying anything. It was just, I was like, I was slowly losing myself completely. And so yeah, I would be literally at that time laying on ice packs or in bed. I mean, that was the last time I could ever do a road trip, was 2017. The last time I traveled was 2015. It was, yeah, it was just, I wake up covered head to toe in bruises and not have touched anything. I remember too, I was thinking the other day, like at that time, going from someone who was incredibly active to like, I couldn't even walk around the block. It was like walking through molasses, like, you know, just or quicksand. Like, and I remember my brain also wasn't firing because, like, if I was cognizant, I would have thought, this isn't right. There's something wrong. But I remember literally thinking, I can't figure out what's wrong, but something is wrong, not right. And it would be I would have conversations with people and I would like a regular word and I couldn't think of the word. Um, and I mean, I had, oh yeah. And then I had issues with my bladder. Like it stopped. I would have to put pressure on my hips in order to release my bladder. There were just so many weird things that were happening. I had a 2-page full list and I made an appointment with my primary caregiver, which but prior to, I mean, I rarely saw doctors, like unless I had a sinus infection or whatever. And but I knew where her office was. And I made an appointment and I couldn't find it. Like I knew where to go, but I couldn't find the turn. And I just kept going. I had to pull over. I was in tears and I was like, I don't know where you are. And yeah, I just think like, God, it's just so scary. And like I went and then I finally found it, but I'm there and I'm giving her this, 2-page list. I'm showing like I'm covered in bruises. I haven't touched anything. And she's asking, about my life. And of course, I had to say there's stressful things happening. My dad has brain tumors and she's like, well, let's do your labs and run the labs. They all come back normal, like completely normal. And I'm thinking there's something really wrong and they're all normal. And she says, well, I think you're depressed. I think you need antidepressants. And I said, well, I am depressed because I'm not well. Like there's something wrong with me. And there's maybe one day out of the month when I'm able to be somewhat okay. And I'm not depressed that day, like because I feel better. Like I know that I don't need antidepressants. And so she's like, well, you probably have fibromyalgia. I don't know. Let's see if we can find you a doctor. And so then it was like, well, the fibromyalgia doctor was a pain clinic. And I remember too, so I went to the pain clinic and I hated that whole time because literally I think everyone in there, including the employees, were on some sort of pain medication. And I told them at the beginning, like, I don't want pain medication. I want I want this fixed. I want to find out what's wrong with me. And so at that time, so they were doing steroid injections. So I did like the maximum in the trapezius shoulders and then my occipitals. And I did, as many as I could do, and it sort of helped, but it also made it worse. It was like a weird thing. But they tried a back brace, and then the doctor too said, well, I think you have scoliosis probably from birth. And again, I was like, I have always been really healthy. Like my spine is not crooked. There's something wrong. Like, and then I'd get MRIs done on this like lump that had grown on my stomach. And they're like, you're fine. It's all just normal. And then, passed off, I tried, acupuncture. And they said you have to do 11 sessions. And they like did the TENS unit, which is like an electric thing. And it was like a torture chamber. I had to like ring that because I felt like I was being tortured. It made everything worse. And at the time, again, I didn't know about mold. I didn't know that if you have mold, regular practitioner treatments don't work or they'll make it worse. And so I'm doing what I'm being told and passed around, and cryotherapy and medical medium, celery juicing, trying to like just move the body. And again, like, yeah, there were most of those 2 years from 2017 to 2019, I was mostly bedridden on ice packs. The celery juice, did help a little bit, but to this day, I can't even walk by celery without, I just did so much celery juice. And I'm just trying to think. I mean, there's so many more things that it just kept going around. Oh, and then I started getting, I can't remember what year it was, but I started getting oral thrush, which I had never even heard of, that like adults could have. I had 7 cases in 2 years. And again, the doctors were like, well, it's just stress. And I was like, no, like, no. So they're just loading me with, antifungals. And it was crazy. And then actually it wasn't then, but around that time, I was talking with a friend who just, because I was done with doctors. I was done. I was done thinking, because I also like, I mean, I can't wear certain, I can't wear certain, I still can't, like, I'm better than I was, but like I can't wear certain clothes, nothing tight around the rib cage. Just monitoring the day with like extreme fatigue. I would take a shower and then that would be all I could do. I would just be like, I'd have to lay down. And I mean, there's so many more symptoms that I had that I'm probably not thinking of, but it was really severe. And so I was done thinking there's no hope. Like, this is my life. And I did also, I will say, like, I had a lot of nights where I didn't want to wake up in the morning. And it wasn't because I didn't want to live. It was like I didn't want to live like that. And and I was tired of no one believing me. But I would get up and it was like, and I really believe, I mean, what carried me through is prayer. And I would get up and I would just keep living, and trying something else. So I had a friend who said, I really think you should see an integrative medicine doctor. And maybe that tattoo reaction, you have heavy metals. And I thought, well, maybe I do, but I don't really want to see another doctor. And I don't know what she could do. And so I thought, well, so it was August of 2022. Which was 2 years ago, that I took my friend's advice and I went to see an integrative medicine doctor. I knew nothing about mold at that time, but I will say the weird thing, and I was thinking of this yesterday, I don't know if it was like a week before the appointment, but I found some sort of a interview, online, a blog about a woman who had mold, and it was horrific. And I was reading her story and I was like, thank God, no, I definitely don't have that. I have fibromyalgia, I have myofascial symptom, I have chronic fatigue, I have like, all these other things. I do not have that. I probably have heavy metals, and so like I go to the appointment. Oh, and the other symptoms that I had with the rib thing was, because right before this appointment, I would get these like electric jolts in my back and my ribs. And I had like a skin cancer procedure or something, and the girl put this like grounding pad on my ribs, and my body jumped off the table, and I was like, what's in that? And she said, nothing, it's just a pad. But it was where it was located on my rib that was putting pressure on the electrics. And I don't know. And so I said, but even the nurse, she's like, oh, well, she didn't think anything of it. I thought, this is not normal to be experiencing this. So anyway, so I go to the integrative medicine doctor and I'm telling her my symptoms. And the first thing she says is, I think you have mold. And I was like, well, are you sure? Because so yeah, we tested, and I 100% and mycotoxins, um, multiple multiple mycotoxins, and tested the markers for SIRS, the chronic inflammatory response syndrome, that my body was, I just completely toxic. We did other testing, like SIBO and all these other things, but ultimately was the mycotoxin. So I started a protocol for the Schumacher protocol, and that was really intense. I mean, I was, I think, Emily, I remember messaging you about, at the beginning, I just, I would be covered. I also found out I had mast cell activation. So I'd be covered in 3 different types of crazy rashes, like weird, like pepperoni things, claw-like rashes, but I was not scratched. And then regular, just like rashes. I'd just be just night sweats, chills, fatigue, like so many toxins and parasites like coming out of me. Um, and it was about, I think, 6 months into that. And then my body just, it was too much. I had to stop and give it a break. Um, and then I found out I had to have a hysterectomy, because I had a recurrent. And then at that point, so I was learning all these things about, the mycotoxins. Uh, they cross the blood-brain barrier, but they also cross into the uterus. And so all the symptoms that I had, like, I mean, it affected my hormones. My whole body is completely out of whack. And so I had to have a hysterectomy, and so that was removed last year, my uterus, cervix, and tubes. And because it was just completely, she called it boggy. It was adenomyosis, the entire lining inside, and there were cysts and growths. And I think about, because I had always wanted to be, to have kids, but I think about, like, I mean, it brought up there was a lot of levels of grief from having mold, to also then having to remove an organ due to it. And also then the other added thing of, had I had a child, like, not knowing how toxic I was, like, I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, and how, again, so, and going back to my diagnosis, just really, I think I was in a place of shock, because no one talks about, well, I can't say no one, because there are us and there are people out there, but in terms of my life, I had not heard anybody talk about the severe effects of mold and mycotoxins caused by mold. And that, you see these pictures online, and they're in places with mold on the walls, and I had never lived anywhere like that. That they're homes in nice neighborhoods, and you don't see the mold, you don't smell the mold, you don't even know there's water damage. And or maybe even the case, like, with the house in Hawaii, seeing the black on the roof, but not knowing that was going to be an issue inside the house or anything. And that yeah, so it's just, and then also the whole dynamic of how some people can experience such severe health effects and some people cannot be affected. Like, I do know people who are able to live in water damaged buildings, and I wonder, the health effects, like, how long is that going to last? Because, for me, I was able to do that for how long? And then, but those now, also, one thing I do want to tap in, and say for anyone that's listening that has helped me on my journey is, that there's different, like, there's a lot of people who have mold illness, and they can leave the environment and get better, because it's not a long time, or it depends on the mycotoxin strains. Or maybe they have to detox 6 months or a year. But my experience is like, I'm unfortunately colonized and with decades plus exposure. And this is something I'm still processing and accepting, that it's like, first of all, like, which I know you both know, but like, how is this illness even allowed to be? And it's horrific what it does to the body and the brain. And and then to not be recognized medically. And then for myself, I mean, I've gone through it mostly alone. Like, I can't imagine having kids or a family to take care of. I couldn't even take care of myself. But like, the people that, I'm surrounded by don't understand. And I think I've been thinking, even still, like, it's still really hard. It's hard to go through this. But it's like the hardest part is to go through it and not be believed or understood and have it minimalized, when it's like, I mean, there's still detoxing, like, I'm going through, like, processing out. I had an ozone treatment that I reacted to. So I have like this kind of like a helmet filling on my head right now, and like some neurological electrical stuff in my back, but it's working itself out. But it's like, to be able, I mean, I don't think if I hadn't have this, for someone who doesn't have this, I think it would be really hard to understand, because it's hard to put into words, but it's even harder when it's not acknowledged or recognized. And so, I mean, I'm just so grateful. I remember finding your website, and it was probably around the beginning stages of being diagnosed with SIRS. And I got the surviving mold handbook, or the book that you mailed out through, in Olivia's little letter in there. And I got it in the mail, and I started crying. It was like the first time that there was anything, like, I felt any type of support. And because even the integrative medicine doctor, it was like super expensive. And I've since moved into a new doctor who does care. But I think that's also important, is to kind of do the research and find the right doctor. But yeah, and all the support groups for SIRS, it's like, charge money. And I mean, at this time, I mean, I had nothing. Like, I couldn't work, I had no money, the system was not acknowledging this as a disability. And then it's like, your organization has, I'm not on Facebook, but I saw you do have, it's like, you're offering, a free Facebook group for people with mold. And I think that's really important to, like, what I've seen is the people who really are thrashed by mold illness, we dedicate our lives to, like, to giving back, because it's not about charging money, or, I mean, it's I don't know, but I think that we are going to make some type of difference. All of us, all of the SIRS warriors who have been so completely thrashed and had our lives changed, because at some point this does need to be acknowledged. And I think about, like, since I've started sharing on Instagram my story, I mean, I've had people reach out to me that live in Hawaii, and they're like, oh my God, this is my life. Like, I wonder if I do have mold illness, or there are people who have been in similar, multiple diagnosis, and fully medicated, and realizing they're living in a water damaged home. Like, maybe they have mold. It's the great masquerader, right? It's like, and I even remember, like, the beginning, I tried like an IV cocktail, the Myers cocktail, the vitamin C IV, that's supposed to help you feel really good. And I had a complete herx to that. I mean, it was just, so the whole process, I think too, is a process of acceptance of, like, this is real. This is real. And it's crazy, like, how toxic it can affect our bodies and brains. And also the detox process, like again, depending on the mycotoxins, right, or exposure, but it's not a fast process. And it's like, I remember thinking when I was told um, it could be 3 to 5 years, and maybe 1 to 2 or 3 to 5, depending. And I was like, I'm gonna kick this in 6 months, and I still like I now it's 2 years, and I know I have a long ways to go. I mean, I've cleared a lot, and I am definitely better, but I still have a long journey, and it's mind-boggling. It really is mind-boggling. And I also am in a place of like having to have more compassion for, rather than fighting my body and being angry about it, but to like that, the way that my body has adapted, and the weight gain and all these different, the like shift of the rib, like whatever it's done has been to protect me because of my toxic load. Otherwise it would, I mean, it's in my organs and brain, but like the body is really designed to heal. And the fact that it can heal from mycotoxins, which are, I mean, some of the mycotoxins are just, I mean, I can't even think of the word, but they're used for, not biohazard, but the warfare, biological warfare. I mean, I have those in my body, and the aspergillus, ochratoxin, citrulline, like all these, it's just, and yeah, it's just crazy. So I'm probably rambling on and on, but
It's okay. You've touched on so many amazing and really critically important items that absolutely should be discussed and discussed often. People do need to be aware. And, one of the things I want to jump back to is you talked about how some people seem to have symptoms and other people, they don't seem to be affected. And that really relates to all of our toxin buckets, right? We all have this bucket in our body that holds our toxins to a certain degree, and we're all going to have a different sized bucket depending on our environmental exposures, our diet, our lifestyle, our stress level. All of those things contribute, as well as just our genetic makeup. And so for some people, they will have a lot of symptoms very quickly, and then other people, they may not appear like they have symptoms, but they have other things going on that they just haven't paid a lot of attention to yet. And maybe it's going to take them a couple years for their symptoms to really show up and potentially have a big problem. So we're all very unique. And I think that is, it is hard because nobody seems to understand when one person falls, well, everyone else is fine. So I
mhm.
think that that's just a great thing to talk about. Um, and it can be very confusing to people that are around you who don't understand, well, why are you sick and I'm not sick? I'm
Yeah.
curious, throughout all of this, did you determine any other locations that you were living in when you finally were told that it was mold? What was your current living situation like in that moment? Were you able to go back and evaluate where you were at in that moment to make sure that that was a safe place for recovery for you?
Yeah, so a couple of things, because at that time, well, I was looking back, definitely the Hawaii home, and then some of the places through San Diego had contributed. But in the 2 years, like particularly when I started getting the oral thrush, I had been going to a person's home who I didn't know had well, I didn't know at first they had a roof leak uh for 4 years, and uh very musty, like it was in a back room. um but the dishes in the sink would kind of develop mold, and so I would just wash them because I didn't want the kids there to have molded dishes anyway. So I no longer go to that home. And but the people that live there are okay, and they don't think it's a problem. But yeah, so that had to stop. And then I also, the place where I was staying, there was a front loader washer that ended up, I think it overflowed or leaked and then ended up having to be replaced. And that was a godsend because I didn't know that front loader washers are full of mold. And and the place was tested and treated through like the first couple months that I was diagnosed. But that whole thing, and I mean, I remember calling, I did a Zoom call with Dr. Mary Ackerley, who's I can't remember, she did the video Brain on Fire about SIRS. She's in Tucson. She's a SIRS specialist, and she recommended a mold inspector. He like drove out from Tucson, and he was just the kindest, most honest, man. I mean, he had SIRS, and he's going into homes just so he can help. And because I've found not a lot of people who know how to remediate or test for mold properly. And so that whole, I mean, it's a lot to think about. I mean, I don't, I'm still in a place where I don't really know where I'm going to move next. And that whole process is daunting, right? Because it's very limiting in terms of, because now, I mean, new homes are built with mold in the walls because they're built so quickly. And then there's the older home issue. And then there's like even motorhomes have issues. So, I mean, I'm also working on letting go of fear and trusting that, because I do have a strong intuition that that's something. I was telling someone earlier today. I mean, I will never stop advocating for myself, like no matter how long this takes. I mean, if I can live through almost a decade of gaslighting from medical doctors and have found my way this far, like I will, and that again is completely through prayer. But if anyone is listening to this, that I will sincerely say that if I can get through this, and I know both of you have, it's like anybody can get through this. It just takes that willingness to keep going and not give up.
I do want to say I'm very sorry for you having to go through and have a hysterectomy because of everything that has happened to you. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of women do get hysterectomies because of this. I know myself, I was ready to go on the table because I thought that would fix my pain, because no doctor ever thought to think it could be your indoor environment causing all this pain and hormonal issues, and like you had the painful periods and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that there's a big level of grief there for women that have had to go through this, because now you've lost your ability to have a child
Yeah.
because of it. So I'm very sorry that you've had to go through that.
Thank you. I mean, and I feel for you too and what you've walked through. And again, I'm just so grateful that you created Malachi's Message Foundation to honor your baby Malachi. And so like you just helping so many, it's going to be millions of us mold SIRS warriors to be able to have lives. So like what a gift that is. But all that you walked through and endured, it's like it's really unfathomable, what we go through. So thank you.
And I think your story is very powerful because a lot of people are just like you. It's been years of gaslighting, and then years of exposure, and years of not getting better, and years of being put on all these medications that are just band-aids and not getting to the root cause, that also then can cause health issues. And
Yeah.
so for anybody that is, continue to decline, you need to really think it could be mold exposure. Go get tested by a doctor that is, knowledgeable in that area and can test you properly. So I met a woman the other day, 20 years, it was like 20 plus years she's been gaslit. And now she's finally just starting her healing journey.
I can't even imagine. I think it's hard. It's harder because a lot of people at that point just want to stay on the medication and they just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like with mold being the great masquerader, it's like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, MS, like, I mean, even Lyme. And that's the thing that I find is so crazy. Most people that have Lyme also have mold, but they don't talk about the mold, they talk about the Lyme because mold has stigma. And whereas Lyme gets, I mean, it certainly needs, Lyme is definitely an issue, like, and it creates neurological, like this similar horrifying, illness symptoms. But the fact that mold is hushed down when it's really the one that's the one that needs to be talked about the most is, so yeah. um I really feel for a lot of people who are in, have MS or in wheelchairs or all these different labeled diseases that could get treated for mold and get well after, however long it takes, but that at least there's a light to the end. And that's how I feel now is this is gnarly. The detox process is very gnarly, the healing journey, but there's a light, whereas I didn't have that before. And, my life was going to be over. And it's like now I know that at some point there's going to be a full recovery and I'm going to get my health back. Whatever that looks like, I don't know. I mean, I don't even really remember it. But one thing I'll say too, I have a friend who helped me put a website together, just as like another way to bring awareness to SIRS. And it's really just like an incorporation, sort of like if someone went to the library and pulled a card on SIRS, and I have your website on there and all different like interviews, because I'm a researcher but not everyone else is. And so I wanted it to be something where someone could go and like one-stop shop, pick up the site, and then just like start clicking on all these different things and, find your website, find these resources, read these interviews, hear podcasts, like, and feel comforted to know they're not alone. And it's called CureSIRScampaign.org. So I just wanted to leave that out there if that's helpful for anyone as well.
I am gonna look that up. Cures, what is it again? Say it.
It's called Cure, CURE, SIRS, CIRS, campaign.org.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's important what you're doing right now by sharing your story, because oftentimes the sickest don't have the capacity to speak up for themselves and to advocate. So as we're on our healing journey, it is critical that we all use our voice. We all talk about our experiences. We talk about our symptoms. We talk about our misdiagnoses, the gaslighting, because that is how we are going to pull together to make change and to make mold illness um, a viable option. Perhaps maybe one day when you go to the emergency room, the person
Yeah.
that's treating you may actually ask you, well, do you have any water damage in your home? Have you experienced any mold in your home? Have you seen anything? These are basic questions that should be asked, but they're not, because people are not aware. It's not current right now. But what you're doing with this interview and with the website you've created is creating awareness. So we can
Thank
just
you.
encourage everyone to do that. That would be
Yes.
so wonderful. We have to advocate as people that are on the road to recovery or having survived this and gotten to the other side.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I'm 100% with that. And I mean, I definitely wanted to wait until I was recovered, like I was telling you both, but just if my story and just sharing this can help one person, that is enough. I mean, that is literally, I, you know, the one thing that's keeping me going is the hope that this has not been for nothing. And that all of us joining together as SIRS warriors really will make a dent in this medical world so that we can get some real change and help for people to get well.
Dana, your website is really cool.
Thank you.
Everybody go check it out. It is really well put together, very, very informative, great resources. I'm looking at it as you and Marion were talking, and
And you're on there too with your mold inspector company.
oh, I didn't see that yet. Thank you.
Yeah.
But no, very, very good website. And I do feel like right now, for whatever reason, I feel like God is bringing everybody together in order to create change. And, you know, stories like yours and everybody else who continue to share their story to spread that awareness, I feel hopefully that in a few years, nobody can ignore it anymore. I've been hearing more and more lately where I never heard it before, people calling me and I always ask, you know, why do you think you have mold? And now I'm hearing that their own medical doctor actually told them, you might need to look at your home. It could be mold exposure. Where beforehand, you never heard that.
That's
So,
great. I know everyone that I tell. I mean, I even met this girl at a Whole Foods, and she's has a different illness of chronic pain. But I told her about what I have, and she went to the website and was interested in it, and she told me there's water damage in the back of Whole Foods and to not come in, and now she's aware of what it is, and so if there's someone there that starts having symptoms, she'll know about it, or it's just I find like you're saying, just like little bits, even in conversation, even if it's someone that personally doesn't have mold, it's going to trickle down the line and eventually get to, or and if just passing it on to doctors, even if they don't hear it, it's filed away somewhere, and eventually, yeah, we're gonna get some change. I'm sure of it.
if before we end the interview, I know you've already given some really great tips, but if there's one thing that you think is the most important thing that you want to share with somebody who's currently going through it, what would that be?
I would say don't give up. Like, don't give up and know that you're not alone. And that you will get the support you need if you keep showing up and keep, just even like for me, I mean, not having the means or the money, like to, and which happens a lot with people with SIRS who like you can't work or don't have other family members to help. It's like, if I can get to where I am now and still be going, like you can too. So no matter what your challenge is that you're facing, don't give up and believe that you can recover. And all you just need to do is be willing to show up, do the research, find the doctor, and trust that those resources will come together. And no matter how long it takes, it will happen. So that's, yeah. And also just that you're not alone. And there is all of us here who relate, right? And the support through Malachi's message, your Facebook group, which again, I mean, there's no charge to jump on that. And there's so many of like podcast interviews. Just listen to stories to help you feel not alone. I would say that is key.
Thank you so much, Dana. And just to elaborate a little bit, Malachi's Message Foundation, which is the presenter of the Toxic Mold Sucks podcast, does have a phenomenal peer-to-peer support group, which is what you've been referring to. That is a free and amazing space to come and meet other people who are just like us, that are either going through mold currently or who have gotten to the other side. And we are all there to support one another with monthly meetings, face-to-face on Zoom, or without your face if you would prefer. So we would love to invite anybody listening to join that. And if you haven't checked out the Malachi's Message Foundation website, please head on over there. We are a nonprofit organization, and we would love to share our free resources with you and to have you as a website visitor. So thank you so much, Dana, for today. This was an amazing opportunity to meet you and talk with you. And we really wish you all the best and speedy recovery and healing, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much. I wish you both the best too. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you,
you.
Dana.